Well, and Ashley, we're lucky enough to Jack and I with Carolyn Murphy and Fredda Rosen to really share the first of two stories today. The overarching lens for chatting about these stories really is the frame that we sent out to people and that you talked about in the opening, Dave, in terms of theory U. But let me turn it to you, Jack, to kind of frame and begin, and we'll, together, the four of us, explore this story at Job Path.
Okay, so Lynda and I were really privileged to have a chunk of time with Carolyn Murphy and Fredda Rosen, and they started to tell us the story of Job Path and these last couple, 3 years. And Fredda gave it a working title. We won't stick you with it, but sort of the theme was Job Path's journey to become an anti-racist organization. And that is a handful. And as they have discovered and will reveal to you now, it was a massive undertaking. So Lynda, do you want to try and provoke gently Carolyn and Fredda to start telling the story? We were really lucky. We had a good chunk of time. Now we've got the compressed view, but if you can be courageous and give people a window into this journey of yours, it'd be wonderful.
So we're going to just ad-lib as we go. We had, as Jack said, the wonderful blessing of all that time. Of course, the classic invitation, could you give us a half an hour? And over an hour later, there we were. But we've got about 15 minutes now, and there are many points to touch on. So between you, if you can talk about the change you're working on and why the change, just to start off. And then we want to listen into what you've tried.
Fredda, you should start.
I should start. Well, I looked at the question, why this change? And the first thing that occurred to me, which I think is quite true, is because it had to change. That we had to take a look at ourselves and at the organization and how we included everyone or didn't include everyone, and how the way we operated might be affecting people in ways we weren't aware of. So it was a change that had to happen. We knew we had to dig into anti-racism, DEIB work, and we started, when did we determine this, Carolyn? Was it 2018 or 2019 when we went to the Art of Hosting event?
And we had started, like we had tried to do things before that. Like I think especially arising out of employee concerns of people who felt like their concerns weren't really being taken seriously or addressed, especially when racist comments were coming from people we support, their families, potentially in employment situations. And we've always had that, like, well, you know, but we have to serve our people and we cannot deviate from our mission. This is our mission's work and we're with people no matter what, but it's taken a toll on people. And that definitely was one of the tipping points where we're like, we don't know how to fully engage on this or address this issue, among other issues as well. So like I've been thinking about this in our U shape. We had done a lot of initial downloading, like let's just get a bunch of people in a room and talk about race, even though I have no idea how to talk about race. And that didn't go great. And then tried it again and it was only white people in the room, and we talked about privilege, but then it again didn't go anywhere, and people in the staff were like, what are all those white people doing? And then we did have the great opportunity to go to that Art of Hosting event around challenging conversations about race, and we're able to bring a cross section of people across the organization to that. And then following that 2-day event, we started a small sunshine group that it is named fondly, with the intention of like, okay, this is going to be our small like central core group to keep the conversation going. Then I went on maternity leave, and then 2019 happened, and then 2020 happened. And it's been hard to keep momentum on our own. And so, of course, after George Floyd, like so many organizations, like although we had some starts in the work, it wasn't coming from nowhere, like out of the blue, like, okay, now we care about race. But we had surveyed our staff to find out what they needed, what they felt like they needed following. And a lot of people wanted to come together for healing, but we realized that we couldn't do that without having established more trust in the organization. We couldn't confidently hold a space where people could feel safe and comfortable to talk about this area of great vulnerability, and like keep opening up painful experiences. Like we couldn't do that ourselves. So we ended up going through a very, very, very long vetting process of seeking outside consultation. After meeting with a few different groups, we ended up going with Mary Green, who is awesome. I definitely recommend checking her out. Also for anybody in this space, if you're not already on her email list, she has these, I'm forgetting the name already, but every first Monday of the month, she hosts a huge space with incredible speakers and breakouts, and it's engaging and wonderful. And so, yeah, we decided that we needed outside help to really help push it forward, and somebody who's respected. I can just keep going because now I'm like, all right, but if you wanted to interject it. So one of the things that was especially challenging about like going out to consultants and asking them to help us with the work was they're like, well, what do you want? And we're like, we want to do better. We want to fix it. We want people to be happy. And they're like, yeah, that's not enough. Like, what do you want? What's the point? What's driving you? What's your vision? And we really had to spend a lot of time and have a lot of conversations to really figure out the vision and figure out the purpose. Like, are we doing this to make ourselves feel better? Are we doing this to check a box? Or are we doing this to make sure that our staff feel like they're being treated as full humans and that they're being heard and respected? And so I don't want to damn us by saying that, but it's something that people weren't totally feeling. So we ended up literally creating like a whole sheet with like all of the different columns of all of the different stakeholders, like, you know, people we support, our agency leadership, our HR team, all staff in general, and like kind of mapped out like what kind of actions we wanted to see throughout the year, or really throughout like a 15-month period. And so that included like agency-wide like anti-racism training to get people, as like a literal step one, to get people speaking the same language, existing in the same level of reality, even if that's still, you know, large. There's a lot of space on either side of that. But we really wanted people to be able to like acknowledge and speak the same language. Additionally, we've had our senior leadership team, which includes 9 people, Fredda included, our general counsel, our associate executive directors and senior directors, even our director of finance now. We've all had executive coaching as well, which I would love to pause for Fredda to talk about her experience with that. But it's been a really wonderful opportunity and investment, a great investment, at least for our senior leadership team, to be able to have somebody to talk to, and work through issues and work through concerns and speak without self-consciousness or without fear of harming people. Like, that's the work of our leadership, has been to have the necessary conversations and do the online and offline learning to be able to better support staff when they're having issues, and not explain things away and not inadvertently gaslight people. So anyway, Fred, I'd love for you to add in about your coaching experience.
Yeah, well, I'd like to add in a couple of things. I mean, the coaching experience has been incredibly valuable. Carolyn had heard about that when she was in her exploration process. And I kind of wondered, here I am, I'm really at the end of my career. What do I need coaching for? It's too late. But wow, has it been incredibly helpful to have someone who was there to listen and guide and help me think through a lot of what I was processing for myself. I mean, some of what I've talked about with him has to do with issues we've confronted at the organization, and listening to him talk about issues that he confronted when he was the CEO of a quite large organization. But a lot of it has also been about very personally how we are looking at ourselves and changing and trying to change and trying to understand and trying to uncover where our biases, trying to let our defenses down. And that's been extremely helpful. One of the questions you asked is, what are you learning and what have you tried? I think one of the things that's been very, very helpful for me, in addition to the coaching, has been doing a lot of reading personally, a lot of reading, because it's given me time to kind of focus in and really confront some of the assumptions I've made about myself. It's really, you have to, and the coach kind of served this for me. It's almost like a therapeutic kind of process. So anybody who's thinking about this, and we're kind of struggling now with helping our board get on board. And I just think that the personal commitment to learning is very, very important. And to being brave. People talk a lot about being brave, and it is true. And I don't think I've even been nearly half as brave as I need to be yet in terms of some of the conversations I need to have, but I know I need to get there.
Thank you. Jack, it looks like a question for me.
Well, could you talk a little bit about this vision that they arm twisted you into? Take reinventing for yourselves, because that sounds like that was quite a journey. And who was engaged in that? How'd that go?
So I had started to kind of map it out after having had some conversations with the Sunshine Group. But ultimately, the Sunshine Group helped to really put the pieces in place. Anytime we'd be like, well, we want to have supervisors targeted here, and then, then all these ideas were generated around like, okay, well, if we're going to do that for them, like, we need to have the people we support, and then we can have different concentration areas. And then it immediately became like let's jam in all this stuff in a 15-minute period of time during this pandemic. And so I think a few things helped to tailor the vision. One was budget, and what we could actually do, and what could be paid for, essentially, but also the actual time commitment. We knew it would be real, and we knew that there would be time put into this, but the amount of time wasn't really we couldn't really fully understand it until we got into it, and we're very thankful that we kind of scaled back, because even with that, we're behind our original schedule. But I think it also reminds us that this is eternal work. Like you can't try to do all the things in 15 months. Like you can take your first baby steps, like as Mary said, like you can plant the seed, but it takes a long time of tending and watering and feeding, but then sometimes you got to let it do its thing, and when it's ready to sprout, it'll sprout. And so I think we're really recognizing that we can't, and it's hard, like each time we have one of our sessions and we hear people like talking about concerns, we're like, when can we start to fix it?
Gotta fix it.
Gotta fix it right now. But we really have to take our time with the process and make sure that we are all like moving in the same and right direction.
One of the things that I think was interesting, that even actually the whole process of selecting a consultant, describing the vision, there was a lot of learning that took place just in that process alone. And so I feel as if in some ways we did start the work with that, but I also want to just say a couple of other things. One is about budget, and that is that, you know, I'd heard it said in a conversation among executive directors, someone said, well, we're a small agency, we can't afford to have consultants. And, you know, I just want to say Job Path's a very small agency. We don't have a lot of spare change around, but it is something that you must invest in financially, as well as emotionally and organizationally. And so we made for us what was a pretty significant investment. We would have liked to have done more, as Carolyn pointed out, but I think we came to a good place. And I think the really important, another very, very important point here is that, you know, just to emphasize that this is ongoing. So we have started a 10-month engagement. As we get to the end of it, we'll be thinking, all right, well, what do we want to dig into next? There's a lot of work ahead.
Yeah. What about your, go ahead, Lynda.
No, go ahead. I do want to ask Carolyn to speak to one of the comments you made when we talked the other day, was that, and you touched on it a little bit here, when you said, I'm constantly thinking about Theory U. That's playing in my head. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I think it's just, it always reminds me that we're not always going to be able to jump to a conclusion or fix a problem. And it really is about going on the journey and collecting experiences and collecting perspectives and ways that you wouldn't normally expect, or, you know, through like trying to intellectualize it and explain it to yourself, like, well, there's surely I can fix this, or surely there's got to be a logical way forward, but realizing like it's not, like it takes so much more than that, especially to make organizational change. And I think just really taking the time to process it and bring as many people along as you can, and really being open for that. Like, I need to hear these voices that aren't in my head. Those other voices have so much wisdom, and Theory U is like, ever since first learning about it, it has always been, whenever like confronted with a challenging situation, I'm like, we should Theory U this. Because at the very least, you feel connected and you feel heard and you feel like other people are in it with you. And it's really necessary for going through work like this. Even like attending our, like we had Support Worker University, and we didn't even do a full Theory U, but we found ourselves just trying to like problem solve. We're like, all right, we got to do an activity. What's going to be the activity? Let's just name a bunch of stuff. And We literally was like, you know what? Let's take 3 minutes, close our eyes, be silent, and see what emerges. And even just that moment in a space where we're like, we gotta get it done, was so helpful and clarifying. So even if you can take small pieces of it and infuse it into meetings or thinking time, it's really valuable.
Thank you, Carolyn. Jack, I think you're going to a place now that I was going to go before we actually
Yeah.
ask everyone to pause a moment. Were you
Sorry.
about to, Jack, were you just about to ask about anti-racism light? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you both talked about the extensive work with different sub-communities, and almost every single one of them was way more work than you originally thought about. But, imagine everybody doing a pretty intensive anti-racism light course. Wow, this is, and I suspect that's not easy work. I don't know, and your board work and executive work, and at every tier of the organization, you've been working through. It's amazing.
Yeah. And we haven't even really gotten to the point where we are looking at our policies and our practices. And although Carolyn's done an amazing job of looking at our hiring practices and making sure that we really not only are equitable, but that we are asking through the interview process to make sure that we're hiring people who are on board and committed to this process.
Any summary learnings, just really quickly, because of time pressure? We have learned.
I've learned, and I've said this before, but it keeps coming back to me, really, that the more I've learned, the less I realize I know. And as much as people told me it would be hard, I didn't realize how hard personally and emotionally the work would be.
Yeah.
But yet, I feel even more deeply how important it is.
Before you said, you had a wonderful phrase, anti-racism isn't for sissies.
Yeah. Paraphrasing Betty Davis, it's really not. I mean, as a white person, it's really not. I imagine for people of color as well, but I'm a white person, and I can speak for myself as from my position. And it's been very painful for me to look at some things in myself I didn't really want to look at.
Carolyn?
I think I keep having to learn this lesson over and over again, but you can't accept perfectionism or you can't expect perfectionism, and there's not going to be a clean, easy way to move forward, and you can't let your shame hold you back from continuing forward. And it may need a pause, it may need time to process and but like really learning that it's always better to like pick up the phone and talk to somebody than try to explain something to yourself and get the other people's perspectives. It's been I feel like a lot of what made the process take so long to get off the ground was that I was like, all right, I'm doing this, I have to do this, and I can't really ask for help because I have to just do it because everyone else is working really hard and this is my task and I just have to make it happen. But it got stuck with me. It got stuck. And I realized that if I had spoken up sooner and brought in people sooner and had honest conversations about what was holding me back, which was fear of failing or feeling fear of hurting people more because prior times that I had tried hadn't taken off, like recognizing that if I just, it's important to talk about what's scaring you and what's holding you back, because that's really the only way through it.
Lynda, do you want to take it?
I actually want to pick up, Carolyn, also on your talking about stillness and taking a pause. And we want to thank you both. You just were amazing. After all that hour conversation, you just really hit the high points, women.
Yeah.
And we wanted actually to invite everyone who's here to just take a couple of moments just of stillness to and think about what's resonated with you in listening to this story. You could doodle or use your journal. Just try and capture what's come up for you and what's been touched in you, where that's happening in your body. Just take a couple of minutes.